Welcome back to my channel. So as y'all can see by the title, I am going to be giving some more commentary, and this time it is going to be about a show or a network called Qubo. I'm really excited to be making this video because this has been a network that I grew up on, as I was somebody who did not have cable. This is something that I am so excited to make a video on because I have a lot of experience, knowledge, and a lot of nostalgia with this network. And I'm excited to be doing a deep dive video slash commentary video slash what happened to this. Like, I just kind of wanted to make a video on what happened to this network. I have a lot of notes here. I got a lot of my notes from Wikipedia, some Reddit, some websites that happen to know a lot about what happened. So I have notes, so if I happen to be looking down a lot, it's because I am reading, but y'all probably won't see too much of me reading because I will be putting like overlay videos or whatever. So yeah, and if y'all happen to like this kind of content, y'all let me know. Cannot wait to make this video or put this video out for y'all because this is such a video I was super excited on making. Make sure y'all like and y'all comment and y'all subscribe and y'all do all that good stuff. And now we're about to be getting into it. So I was on the phone talking to my cousin, and we had this conversation about a network that only a select few people know of, and it was the network Qubo. We were having this conversation so randomly and was curious as to what happened to it and where it disappeared to, and ultimately why did it disappear. I had wondered this for quite a while now and debated on making a video on it, but didn't know if anyone cared. As Qubo was such a rare gem, I didn't think anyone but my family watched. So in this video, as I said before, I will be discussing the beginning slash launch of Qubo, the best of Qubo, and ultimately what happened to Qubo that caused its quiet shutdown that left many confused. Getting into the beginning of Qubo, in 2006, Ion Media, NBC, who at the time owned 32% of Ion at the time, Chorus Entertainment, Scholastic Corporation, and Classic Media, which now goes by the name of DreamWorks Classics, came together to pitch a new network that was targeted for children that went by the name of Qubo, which would provide a multitude of things, but most importantly, providing educational elements and shows that would benefit children mentally. I had to put my laptop higher so it don't look like I'm looking down, but yeah. They wanted Qubo to provide a website, a video on demand service, and a 24-hour network that played constant cartoons and educational content. Originally, Qubo was meant to be a bilingual network that had both Spanish and English shows because, as stated by the Qubo president himself, the market for Spanish-speaking children's programs were severely overlooked and disregarded and compared to English-speaking network and shows. He also wanted Spanish-speaking children to learn in ways that English-speaking children learned, which prompted his idea for Qubo to be both a English and Spanish speaking network. Qubo was an American television network that was targeted for children between the ages 5 through 14. It was owned by Ion Media, which leaned more towards an older audience with the shows like Criminal Minds, Law and Order, and Blue Bloods, to name a few, that played on Ion specifically. Qubo played throughout the day 24/7, as it was also a free-to-air network that allowed people and children without cable to watch all day long. Not to mention, it also had a switch where at 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. Qubo would transition to Qubo Night Out, which was introduced in 2010, that was more aimed at a mature audience with shows like He-Man, She-Ra, Ghostbusters, and Brave Star. Qubo launched this network on September 9th, 2006, showing on NBC, playing only on Saturday mornings to replace Discovery Kids on NBC, and also played on Telemundo on Saturday and Sunday mornings to replace Telemundo Kids. But 4 months later, Qubo officially launched as its own network slash station, specifically on January 8th, 2007. This is just a quick side note. When I was doing research for Qubo and trying to figure out things in between Qubo where some problems were being had at, because it was really hard for me to try to find like where problems were being had, specifically with like Ion and Qubo. So I had to go on Ion's Wikipedia to know and learn about like what was going on behind the scenes of Qubo, because like if I wanted to do research on Qubo, I kind of had to do research on Ion as well, because Ion was the company that ran Qubo. So I just did some quick research on Ion Media, and I found out that about 2 years later, after launching Qubo, Ion will file for bankruptcy for the second time in just 2 years, and just to put this out here, 2 years before they launched Qubo. So they were already bankrupt for a first time before launching Qubo, and then now getting into Qubo's already launched 2 years later. After Qubo is launched, they're bankrupt again. In just 2 years after previously being sued for copyright infringement over their network name Ion, which they lost and ended up having to pay a settlement of $1.7 million. But a month before filing for bankruptcy, Ion had already dug themselves into a hole, as they were already in debt that came out to be over $2 billion long. To put it simply, the companies they borrowed from were not happy with Ion not making the money back, so Ion had to find new companies to borrow from to recover. To my knowledge, they did. Late 2009, a trio of equity companies ended up purchasing Ion for a shared amount, and the rest is kind of unrelated to Qubo, but just know that this sort of plays a factor in the timeline, as Qubo original collaborators Scholastic, NBC, and Telemundo ends up leaving. So that just kind of adds into the timeline of things, which puts a lot of stuff into perspective, which is why I wanted to add that bit in there, because I did not know that Ion went bankrupt and they had like a super long debt of $2 billion. But yeah, that happened in between, in just 2 years of launching Qubo. They were bankrupt before launching Qubo, and then after launching Qubo, they ended up bankrupt again. So yeah, now getting into the official launch of Qubo, officially being its own network, it debuted with the shows Jacob Tutu, possibly a top 3 show, but I digress, Babar, Jane the Dragon, 321 Penguins, Larry Boy, The Cartoon Adventures, which I just realized after research that this was a spinoff of VeggieTales. I don't know how I didn't know that, and most notably VeggieTales itself, marking the first time that VeggieTales had ever been broadcasted on a network that was not marketed towards Christianity. 4 of the 6 shows named, Jane the Dragon, VeggieTales, 321 Penguins, and Larry Boy, made their official debuts on television, as Jacob Tutu originally aired with a Spanish dub on Telemundo Kids, to become the only show from Telemundo Kids that transitioned to Qubo. And to add, Babar also made its official TV debut on HBO in America and on CBS in Canada in the late 1980s, and ended up in Qubo's hands in September 9, 2006, up until Qubo's closure, which we will be getting into. Skimming past some pretty basic info and getting into a time where Qubo had dealt with some controversy, specifically with the creator of VeggieTales, whose name is Phil Vischer, I believe that's how you say his last name, and how he was disappointed with how he felt the Qubo network was purposefully editing the show to make it less about religion, and he talked about how that upset him and how he would have not signed a contract with Qubo if he knew beforehand that the main elements of his creation were going to get removed. He didn't want to face the allegations of being a sellout or he had done it for money, but Phil stated he overall understood the network's decision on wanting to remain neutral, and said, and I quote, "VeggieTales is religious and NBC is not. I want to focus people more on, isn't it cool that Bob and Larry are on television?" End quote. Shortly after, Qubo decided to cease airing VeggieTales and Larry Boy in 2009 and continuing to make a show called Sheldon that was based around the main character himself, Sheldon, who was a shy selfish who lived with his family and happened to always get into some kind of problem. I don't know if they made Sheldon as a show to replace Larry Boy and VeggieTales specifically, but the timelines did kind of cross over a little bit. Hey y'all, so it's editing me. I also would like to add in this section that Pearly was also made a few days after Larry Boy and VeggieTales was ended. So Pearly could have been the show made to replace VeggieTales and Larry Boy specifically, and not Sheldon. So I just wanted to add this because I'll put it on here, but yeah, it was very, very, very overlapping. It overlapped with each other. So I feel like Qubo created Pearly as a show replacer for VeggieTales and Larry Boy. So yeah, I just wanted to add that. Now getting into the best of Qubo and the success of the network and what shows officially stamped Qubo as a notable network, we'll start with arguably the best and the most mainstream, which was The Magic School Bus. The animated show was created in September 10, 1994, which originally aired on PBS Kids and officially made its debut on Qubo in 2020. The Magic School Bus's success and brand was so popular that it was picked up by Netflix and a spin-off show was made in 2017. It was available to stream up until 2021. I don't know about y'all, but I feel like I've always been watching the Magic School Bus on Qubo before 2020, so I'm not sure. Maybe it was a Mandela effect or something. Maybe I was watching it on PBS Kids, who knows? Because I do know for sure I was watching the Magic School Bus way before 2020, but I don't know. We've also had shows like Pearly that debuted on Qubo in 2009. She was a fairy that was put in charge to look after Jubilee Park and make sure everything's okay. While doing it, she must stay out of sight of the humans so she doesn't get caught. The show was a huge fan favorite by the girls, as we didn't see much girly shows on the network. We also had Archie's Weird Mysteries, which got a spinoff to be named Riverdale on CW that ended up being pretty popular, landing 7 seasons as a mystery, crime, and drama-filled American teen TV show. He-Man, which are now being collected, My Friend Rabbit, Whalers Wildlife, Zulu Patrol, Turbo Dogs, Pecola, and Me and Ian, to name a few more fan favorites. When these shows would come on, the viewership would reportedly spike. Qubo's network success lasted for quite some time. There were no worries for the network and no problems with viewership, as they were constantly and consistently battling with PBS Kids when it came to viewership. Back then, they had no worries, as they could pretty confidently say they ended up finding their target audience for all times of the day, as the children would watch from the mornings and afternoons, and the adults could also watch at 12 a.m. after maybe a long shift at work. And not to mention, the audience typically ended up coming back, so when they had a consistent group of viewers, there were no real worries. And now we're here where I'm assuming what everyone wants to know: what went wrong? So there's multiple answers to this question, so let me break it down. Starting with the fact that their viewership dropped tremendously after their partners NBC, Telemundo, and Chorus Entertainment departed ways on March 28, 2012 to further push their own networks and or channels with children-centered shows after being bought by Comcast. This left Qubo, to put it simply, underfunded, and it was all now under control by Ion. Later, after Ion decided to buy the stakes in Qubo, which were held by, at the time, Classic Media, which is now more notably known as DreamWorks Classics, after being bought by DreamWorks Networks. Continuing on, Ion ended up rebranding Qubo to Qubo Kids Corner on January 4, 2015. Fast forward to September 2020, a company that went by the name of Scripps Network went ahead and announced that they wanted to buy Ion Network, which obviously included Qubo, for $2.6 billion. 4 months later, the deal seemingly was accepted, as Ion was now under operation under the company Scripps Network. Very shortly after, a week after actually, the Scripps Network announced suddenly that Ion Shop in Qubo would discontinue after February 28th and wouldn't air any more of its cartoons. On Qubo's final day of airing, there were rumors and posts online talking about some hoax video, some troll made, and I would like to inform a lot of people on that video that it was fake. So no, there will not be no further discussions about that video because it was fake. So if you kind of came for that video specifically, I won't really be discussing that because that is fake. It had absolutely nothing to do with Qubo. It was just a scam. As of today, the worth of Ion has drastically dropped from a whopping $2 billion to reportedly around $600 million just after owning it for 2 years. And since we're speaking of money, that also played a huge part in why Qubo shut down, as the new owners of Qubo and Ion felt like there was no money to be made with Qubo, since it was a free-to-air children's network that had dwindled out during the time it was bought. Another reason why Qubo ended up failing after a period of time is because it just didn't keep up with how the times and kids were drastically changing. There were no social media promotions, no social media accounts, and to be honest, a lot of the most popular shows were extremely outdated when it came to the bigger networks. It was losing a lot of its viewership to the rise of YouTube and the rise of streaming, and it couldn't compare, especially with how parents were starting to give their children their phones and tablets to watch their shows on. Back then, we had to watch TV, and that was our biggest form of entertainment was TV, outside, and physical interaction. As to the upcoming generation of kids, those recipes were slowly going away with how mainstream phones, the internet, and social media became. It was reported that the last show to play before the network shut down was Inspector Gadget, and it kind of just went black after that until a new network took over, but I cannot confirm this or not. I just seen this on Reddit and someone was like, yeah, the last show to play was Inspector Gadget, and I was just like, okay, if they said this, it should be credible, right? Because who's lying about this? Like, why were you lying about this? In conclusion, Qubo was shut down because they couldn't adapt to the times, wasn't making enough money to sustain the network, and no one was caring about the network the more the world updated, and that's what caused their downfall. You can still watch a ton of shows from Qubo on Tubi now, as they now have, to my research, Pearly, Jacob Tutu, Marvin the Tap Dancing Horse, Class of Titans, Jakers, Willa's Wildlife, and so much more. So yeah, y'all, this was basically just my deep dive on what went wrong with Qubo. To just conclude this all, what went wrong with Qubo is they were so underfunded, super underfunded, disregarded, and in the end, Qubo just kind of didn't get the love that they needed. Like, that's why the network shut down. The company didn't really feel like it was any point in keeping the company alive or network alive, because they weren't really making anything from the network to begin with. So that's why the company or the network ended up shutting down. So that's my analysis, that's my commentary on this. If there was something that I missed that y'all wish that I would have added to this video, y'all let me know. I just wanted to make a short, sweet, simple video and just give some more context or backstory to Qubo and what was happening behind the scenes and why did it shut down. Will it ever come back? No, it won't ever come back. So if you see any speculation that are where people are like, oh, Qubo's coming back, it's not gonna ever come back. Never gonna come back. I don't ever see it coming back. Y'all let me know if y'all like this video. I had so much fun making this video. I had so much fun doing research for this video. I did my research for this video for like 3 days straight, trying to deep dive into it, because I literally could not find a lot of information about Qubo specifically. It's like you literally have to dig in the deep well to try to find Qubo information. If y'all liked it, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, do all that good stuff, and I will be seeing y'all in my next video. Bye.